Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Q&A with our special guest, Ryan Costello. And we're here to ask some questions, have some fun, and kind of see like the ins and outs of, this Voltron social media. And I think, thanks to, Indy for kind of setting this all up
Totally
and,
impromptu.
kind of getting the ball rolling
Totally
on all
impromptu.
of that. Uh, um, and, so I will do some quick introductions of who we are and then who our guest is, and then we'll get started. So, Indy, if you want to go for it.
Sure. I'm Indy. I've hosted a variety of pop culture events and Q&As before. I've worked in multiple pop culture media industries, and I am also a veteran Voltron fan from like 2016 for VLD. So I've been there since season one.
Nice. Um, I'm Tara. I am a recent film and television graduate, and I've been a huge fan of Voltron. It made me kind of get into the industry, or want to join the industry, really. And I've been a huge Legendary Defender fan since 2016, but have over the past few years, kind of recently, been getting more into the rest of the franchise. And so, I have my little Voltron here, and I love collecting. So, if anybody wants to talk to me about collecting, hit me up. But I am so excited to introduce our guest, Ryan Costello. Ryan was the social media manager for the Voltron accounts from April 2024 to April of 2025. He's also an accomplished TTRPG designer and has written for IPs such as G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Pony, and has worked on several different pitches and treatments for other animated series, films, and TV shows. And he also has a podcast network called the No Direction Podcast. So, Ryan, if I missed anything, if you want to say a few things, that's up to you.
I think that's a pretty good summary of everything I've done in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we will jump right into the questions. For some context, we sent out a form to our Discord server to ask any question they want regarding the media industry, regarding Voltron specifically. So we're just going to start off with some industry TTRPG questions, and then we'll kind of get more into the nitty gritty Voltron stuff later on. So our first question is, how did you break into the world of TTRPG?
Through the podcast. So the podcast started in 2007, which podcasts were barely a thing then. And I would bring people on, and before I could interview them, I had to explain what a podcast was. And so, in doing that, I was accidentally giving myself basically a university level class, like one-on-one tutoring with some of the greats in the TTRPG industry. So I was getting all the insight into how to be a game designer, how to get jobs in game design, the faux pas of the industry. And so when I got my first opportunity, I suddenly, like, for a first time writer, I was writing like a veteran, and I knew what the professional things to do. Communicate, stay on time. That's more important than good writing. So yeah, my podcast is dedicated to Pathfinder, which is kind of the main competition to Dungeons and Dragons. And my first writing work was with Pathfinder. And then after I built up some credentials in that area, I got word that Renegade Game Studios got the license to G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers, and My Little Pony. I think it was all part of the same announcement. And I'm
Mhm.
a big G.I. Joe fan. Like I love a lot of 80s properties, but G.I. Joe's my biggest one. And so I put together my resume, which was the greatest resume I've ever written. It was like, here are all my credentials. As a G.I. Joe fan, I helped run these fan conventions. I used to write these articles just for the fun of it, promoting G.I. Joe. And then here's all my RPG industry credits. And then on top of that, if you hire me, here's the stuff I do as a podcaster. And I can just, you're not going to pay me for this stuff, but just added benefit. If you hire me, you'll get all of that stuff, but for this new TTRPG. And they liked it. They hired me. I was brought on more as the G.I. Joe lore guy on the team because it was supposed to be a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It was supposed to use the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition engine at first, which I didn't
Cool.
have any official credits for. So they brought in D&D experts and me to be the G.I. Joe team. And then we shifted gears and decided to make our own system. And then that goes back to all of the podcast interviews I've done with people that did launch their own system. And so I kind of took over a new leadership role within the group. and became a major contributor to what became the Essence 20 system, which is the one that runs the G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Pony, Power Rangers, and now Welcome to Night Vale RPGs.
Awesome. That's so cool.
Holy crap.
I didn't.
Very cool.
Yeah, I didn't even think like, oh wow, podcasts are kind of a recent thing, you
Yeah.
know?
Podcasts were definitely
Yeah, I mean, now they're a household name, but like when I was doing it, there were still iPods.
Yeah. Yeah.
iPod Nanos.
Wow. A
iPod
different
Classic.
time.
That was
All
like
right.
my high school
Moving
days.
on. Oh. Yeah. All right.
Oh, okay.
So Indy, yeah.
Yep, sorry. So
No,
we got a
you're fine.
question-
You're fine.
We got a question from Torvik, who's one of our artists in the Discord, and they were asking what's more important with TTRPGs? Is it the storytelling or is it the player experience?
Boy, that is a big question because they're both very important. I would say that ultimately comes down to player experience, but that's more on the GM. Like we have to empower GMs to be able to then empower their players, and the dynamic around the table is that you're there to play a game, do what's most fun for that group. So if it's like a tight rules group where like it is most fun when they are following the rules exactly and still winning, then make sure you run the rules really tight exactly like your players prefer. If it's more of a role-playing thing and they just want, half the session to be them talking amongst themselves, doing silly voices and pretending to be other characters, then make that the priority. As the writer, though, it still has to be, we have to make the system work, and we have to make sure that we give you the tools so that once you get it to the table, you are empowered to play the game however you want.
Nice.
Perfect.
Very cool.
Also, you had a top-notch resume to get that role.
Yeah.
That resume
Oh my
sounds
gosh.
crazy. If I got that on my desk, I'd be like, can we call him like right now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
All right. So moving on, this one's from River. What's the development process like for an RPG? Any unique steps or tips on how to like make that happen?
So every company does it differently, right down to every company has their own definition of what a developer is, a designer, and whatnot. And so I think I'm technically credited as a designer for Renegade, but any other company might describe what I'm doing as developing or just authoring the book. So yeah, it's basically about figuring out what the company wants from you and then doing what that is. So with Renegade, because we had this tight timeline, because it was these licensed properties, and so the more time spent without anything on the shelf, the more Renegade was just sinking money into this project.
Yeah.
Which changed directions halfway through from just adapting a game to creating our own thing and still trying to stay on the schedule. And then COVID hit and supply chain issues hit. And so it was wild. And so I do describe the early days of designing Essence 20 as a very Wild West system, because we would have these big group meetings with all the teams for the first 3 books. And someone would just present, here's a question I have. And I realized that if you were the person who presented a solution for the problem, we didn't spend a lot of time debating whether this was the best solution. It was like, oh, we have a solution, good, and we're going forward with that. So taking initiative, not being afraid to speak your mind and come up with your ideas, and making sure that you formalize your ideas so that it's not, so that it is a proper solution to the problem. That, I think, will generally be rewarded no matter what company you work for. And as I said earlier, you would be surprised how much more important getting something in on time, on deadline, or early if you can. That really makes your whatever your project managers happy, because editors can fix it. Editors will change your words, and so don't try and turn over the perfect manuscript. Try and turn over the manuscript that gets the job done, and let everybody else then do their jobs to make it better.
Yeah, he's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Especially in the licensing world as well, like in terms of like developing a game or even just consumer products as a whole. Like it's just very much, you have a contract for this amount of time, you need to get it out by this date, and then there's a whole bunch of steps in between that you need to like basically just fly through in order to get it on the shelves, because otherwise, again, it's a sinkhole of money,
Yeah, and you do not want to be the bottleneck that makes other people not do their jobs yet. Like you don't want to make people wait and then rush and just hit your deadlines. It's important. And in the negotiation part, if you don't think you can hit the deadline, be honest about that. Take half the work and let them assign the other half to somebody else, or give up the project, because there will be other projects that come.
Yes.
Nice. Very cool. All right.
So this one's from Torveg as well. Where do you draw inspiration for the branches in your storytelling when it comes to TTRPGs?
Yeah, they just come to me. Like, I don't have a good answer for this one.
I think
like,
that's a good
brain.
answer.
Yeah. My brain is always connecting dots, and so when if I'm told we need a story, then generally some dots will connect and they'll come through. Specifically, when actually, no, I can give a specific example. So there was one free RPG product we put out called Cobra Confusion, which is a GI Joe Transformers crossover. And Renegade came to me and just said, like, we want a GI Joe Cobra crossover. And I was like, that's great. I keep up with the current toys, and I know that they just made a Megatron that turns into a Hiss tank, so a Transformer that turns into a GI Joe vehicle. So that should be the center of this whole adventure. And then everything just kind of fell into place from there, because that Megatron came with Baroness. So it's like, okay, Baroness has to be involved. What other toys are coming out in this line? And yeah, so just again, the dots started connecting, and eventually I made sure that I had, other box checked. Like, I made sure I had a diverse cast of NPCs, made sure that because it was Transformers involved, that being a vehicle had to play a part in it. You couldn't just be the tall one in the group. You had to also, there had to be some benefit to being able to turn into a car and drive around. So yeah, it's just a combination of what story I want to tell and the needs of the product line, the needs of the player experience.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's just like whenever people ask me like, how are you so creative? Or like, how do I be creative? I'm like, it just happens. Like, you know? Like, I don't know if there's
come
a
up
way
to me
to
and
do
be
that.
like, I have an idea for a book. Could you write it? And it's like, ideas are the easy part. The writing it is what is the hard part. And if you're paying me to write your idea, sure. But if you're just like, we can collaborate, you've got an idea and I do all the work, I'd rather put that work into my ideas.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do you get jobs for creative and kind of niche IP like Voltron and like social media and design jobs more specifically?
So I'll talk about the G.I. Joe stuff. Well, I already did talk about getting into the G.I. Joe stuff. So by then I had done a bunch of stuff just within the community, which looked great on the resume. But more importantly is that I was aware of the industry side of the things that I like as a hobby. And so that way, when these things are first announced, and these press releases go out all the time, and very rarely do they get picked up by the media sites that are supposed to be covering it. So you really have to be aware of like when this stuff comes out from the source, and then you jump on it and be one of the first people and be like, don't necessarily sell yourself just as a fan. You also have to sell yourself as a professional, because a million people will apply and say like, I'm a big fan of this IP, hire me to do a job I've never done before. So you do need the combination, and you do need to be keeping track of this stuff. But Voltron specifically, my boss just called me into his office one day and said like, we're giving you Voltron. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And then explained this whole deal that they had. And I think because I had other experience working on IPs, they knew they could trust me to manage, with care and with reverence. But there's a very good chance he might have just looked at me and been like, he's the right age for our target demographic, so we'll just give him the job.
Mm.
So yeah, sometimes you have to work very hard, and sometimes it lands in your lap.
Yes.
Wow, that's so cool. They're just like, you have Voltron now. What?
Are you?
Yeah, because I didn't know we had Voltron at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Ooh, this is a fancy question. All right. So this is from Torveg again. What does running a social media account for a company look like from an idea to execution standpoint? Are there multiple people involved in planning? Do you have the final say in what's posted, etc.? So all your insights, please, on a silver platter.
All right. So I will say that with the caveat that every company probably does this differently as well.
Yes.
But the way we did it is that we had the internal team, and then we would regularly meet with World Event Productions. So internally, we would plan out at least 2-3 weeks in advance, and I would do the first draft of the visuals, knowing full well that my visuals are not ready for public consumption. Like, these are sketches that once they get approved at some level, then go to our art department, and then they'll put together a proper graphic for it. And I would write the caption that would go along with the posts, and then I would meet with the other members of our team that were more on the logistics side, and they would look at some of the posts that worked. They would question the analytics. They would look really deep into it. Like they were saying, like, we've noticed that posts where a character is looking at the audience perform better. And that is not a trend I would have ever thought to look for. But, you know, it's the kind of thing that they were professionally trained social media managers or social media professionals. And they let me know all my training is in writing. So the social media stuff was stuff I needed to lean on them for, in the same way that I need to lean on the art department for their insights. And then we would then present this to World Event Productions, and they would go over it. They would give us our thoughts. A lot of the time, they would just, chuckle along and approve everything. Very rarely was something not approved, and the few things that were not approved surprised me. So some of the things, like, there were some rules like, don't make pop culture references to Transformers. We are trying to distinguish ourselves from them, because if you're not a certain degree of educated, then it's all just giant robots to you. So it's like, okay, those are good things to go in ahead of time. And they got weirdly heavy-handed with my first post, which was like, in Defender of the Universe, what color was Hunk's uniform? Because it really skewed towards orange, even though he flew the yellow lion. And I just did like multiple choice, and each one was a bit of a joke. And they changed my jokes, and I was like, okay, this is my first post. I guess this is just what the relationship is going to be like. And they never did it again. So I don't know if they also were like, we don't know if we can trust this guy, so we're going to be heavy-handed in the editing. And then they ran out of time, or they did trust me more. But it was one that always stood out as like, it's weird that was the one time that they were really heavy-handed. And otherwise, like, very rarely did they ask us to just completely scrap something. Sometimes they would give us an opportunity to change something, usually more in the caption than in the art, if it was something that they just didn't want associated with the Voltron account, or if there's something that in their experiences, owning and running Voltron, they knew something might trigger something.
Yeah.
That
makes sense. All right. So, there's this question. Do you have access to the style guides or art files? And if so, what guidelines did you have when constructing social media, static or reels? And are you able to share what they look like?
I believe we had style guides, but that was more given to the art department to, like, after they got the gist of my idea, to make sure that it met the guidelines. I don't believe there was a lot of formal guidelines. We had access to a lot of assets. We definitely we had every episode of every series that we can use however we wanted. We had the soundtracks with none of the special effects recorded over it, and none of the dialogue. So that was really good for when we just needed to set a tone. So yeah, we definitely had a lot of assets, but the style guides were a little more just, follow your heart.
So like a guide to your lab.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I mean, you also did touch on like what guidelines you had when you're speaking to World Event Productions as well. Like, they would give you the okay
Right.
or the no. They sound pretty lenient though, as like in terms of like what a license or IP holder had.
I want to say that I have never met such a cool licensor. Like, they are the perfect people to run Voltron, because, like, if you think about every other brand that came from the 80s, almost all of them are owned by Hasbro now.
Yes.
And Hasbro runs a tight ship, like a very logistics money making ship. Whereas when we were meeting with them, and it was like, here's a cool fun fact, or a meme about a cool fun fact, and he was like, tell me more about this fun fact, this is really interesting. And we would just engage as like Voltron fan to Voltron fan. So yeah, they were lenient. A lot of the rules came up organically when we tried to do something, and that's when we learned that that's not something we should do. Which again did not happen very often, but it was really a treat. And those meetings were like, meetings with licensors can often be just dreadful and dry and very pen pushing, like just very, very logistic. And that was not these. These were social first, and then also making sure we did our professional stuff after.
That's awesome.
That's so great to hear, like, in the industry that we're in now. It's like really refreshing to hear of like an IP holder that's like, yeah, we're gonna work with our fans and work with, the media that we put out, and not, be as like critical and, like hoarding everything for themselves. You know what I mean? So it's
Well,
really nice to hear that.
the whole deal came about because of that same attitude, because we were not a social media company. We were an animation studio, and we did our own social media. And so we would do just shorts with mascot characters that we created, just so that we constantly had stuff out there, getting, building a fan base for us as a studio, even though most of our work was licensed with the bigger studios. And so at a trade show, either Bob or somebody from World Event Productions met with my boss and was like, we don't need to hire an animation studio, but we love what you do with your social media accounts. Can you do that for us? Whereas you would imagine most studios of the size of World Event Productions would be like, we need to find a social media account and go for social media studios.
Yeah. Wow,
I
that's
did.
so cool.
Somebody just posted the comment, "Ooh, which animation studio?" So unfortunately, it's closed down now, which is why I am no longer in charge of Voltron. But it was called Laughing Dragon Studios, and you can still look us up online, and you can find all of our reels, our memes, and whatnot. Because we were just having fun with our stuff, and it was a way for our animators to get their reps in and to make sure we could have a full studio of animators for when a project came in. We didn't need to then do the hiring process. So it was basically, we've got the animators we need, and then when we don't have a contract, then they're just going to work on our own stuff, constantly promoting it. And a lot of it is super fun. I will, after the Q&A, I will get a link to some of our socials, and you can check them out.
Sounds good. And when we, finish this video and everything, I can absolutely add any socials, to the description that you wanted to, plug in there.
Somebody's also asking why they closed down. So this is boring logistics, but basically we're in Quebec, and Quebec had governmental funding for a lot of creative arts. One of them was a bursary for animation studios, which helped us get off the ground. And then the government's changed. One of them looked at it and said, like, we are canceling this. And so my boss and, the accountants tried to adjust so that we could then live without this bursary. But what we didn't expect is that all the other animation studios that had also benefited from this bursary declared bankruptcy. And then the few banks that were lending to them were like, oh no, animation studios are not safe bets. And so they withdrew our loans. So we lost our bursary and our bank loan all at the same time. And so there was no way we could survive that.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's the not fun part of working in the creative industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It could all just change and just like that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, I think for right now, I know you mentioned that you had kind of like a demonstration. So if you wanted to, I can share the screen with you. If you want to do that now.
Sure. So yeah, I've called up some links of just some different ones. Actually, so you said you shared the screen with me. What do you mean by that?
Or no, I'll just take my screen down, and then if you want to put yours up, sorry.
All right. So yeah, I've put together a list of some of the ones that there's stories behind these. So I've highlighted some in green that I want to start with, but if there's anything on this list that intrigues anyone, can you read the list, or is it too small? I can try and zoom in.
If you can zoom in a little bit, then I think it should be fine.
Let's see what 200% looks like.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Double the fun.
You know what? I'll just read through them. So there's hunk color, which I already just talked about. So we will. That one's done. No. There we go. Mind Blown is one of the early ones that we had to change some of the language for. Sven, You Leaving was something that Bob from Voltron very much liked. Cran Cran was one that just there was a real big fan reaction in some of the comments. Laser Noises was one of our first big hits. Astro Cakes was where I made a recipe for the social medias. Voltron Wiki just has one of my favorite comments I ever got from the Voltron fandom. The Heroes We Watch is one that's personally a highlight for me. Lance's Birthday is the first one that's highlighted in green. So I'll get back to the list after I talk about this one. So this one, I think, especially to a server of Clance fans, will appreciate. So I will say that one of our instructions was to minimize any kind of shipping wars because they can take over the comment section. And as often as possible, we tried to make sure that we didn't do anything that could trigger just an inrush of shippers, especially if it was something that was controversial among shippers. And so we just had like a Clance proofing edit pass before we did everything.
Wow.
So I knew Lance's canonical birthday was coming up, so I had this idea of there's this Gen X meme that's like, it's your birthday, you rented GoldenEye, you've got pizza on the way, you don't know it, but this is the best days of your life. And so I wanted to do that, and then in developing, I was like, it's kind of a grim message, so maybe I'll try and find a positive spin on it. And so I knew I wanted to find a picture of Lance smiling, but not like most Lance smiles are creepy. So I needed to find something where he
Yeah.
had just a real, sincere,
Agreed.
genuine smile.
Yeah.
And I found this one where he's seeing Allura use her Bayards for the first time, and he's like genuinely impressed with his friend and teammate. And so I grabbed the screenshot of that. The problem with this picture is that he's very clearly holding a rifle. And so whatever text I added to this picture, he needed to acknowledge the fact that this is a picture of a guy smiling while holding a rifle. And it's even after he gets the red Bayard, so like the contrast is there. You see the rifle against his blue uniform very clearly.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, laser tag. This is something that you do with your friends on your birthday and is the reason you would be holding a rifle. And you know what? He's even kind of geared out like you might, you know, probably a very elaborate laser tag costume, but like laser tag seems to be the context that would work for what I'm going for here. So it's your birthday, you're playing laser tag with all your friends, life is good. And that's when I find out about Dirty Laundry, which is apparently a quite famous Clance slash fic that involves laser tag.
Oh no.
And so, yeah, the comments started bringing up Dirty Laundry. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, some of them just said Dirty Laundry OMG. I'm like, there's nothing about laundry here. So obviously I need to do some decoding. And yeah, and so
Yeah.
so yeah, that's how I discovered Dirty Laundry, and that's how I realized, like, no matter how much you Clance proof something, there is so much to what is going on that side of the community that I am not aware of, that I can just stumble into it. Especially because the text here is about how Lance switched to the red Bayard, and so it's like, okay, I got to make sure I'm talking about the red Bayard without making it seem like there's anything between him and Keith going on there. Like, a lot of effort was made to make sure that this did not reek of Clance. And it did. It was the clanciest post I ever made.
I have a question.
That's so funny.
Did you ever
Yes.
read Dirty Laundry?
I did not. I actually haven't read any slash fic of any fandom. It's just not something I ever seek out.
Don't read
And
it.
I guess I should have read it for professional reasons, just to know what to avoid. I will say that actually I did often use the Shippers Wiki, because there's just some times where I was like, I need a picture of these two characters together. What episode is that in? And you go to the wiki and it's like, here's every single pairing of characters you can imagine and a list of every single time they have a scene together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's smart.
It's a good resource, you know.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny because later in this presentation, I actually have the screenshot of a comment of mentioning Dirty Laundry, and it has, I'm assuming your response, which is, we tried so hard to Clance proof this post, but
There
we
we go,
couldn't. Yeah. So I had that later in here, and I wanted to ask about that. But yeah, thank you for bringing it up for me.
Yep.
But yeah,
It was a
that's
good
funny.
post too. It's just not
It
not
is,
the
yeah.
reaction I was expecting.
I can't imagine you just like posting that and then getting the quote, oh my god, Dirty Laundry. And you're like, what the hell is Dirty Laundry?
Right. Now, I did
Turn the phone off. Yeah.
when I got the job, I did do research into the Voltron fandom because I had to know who I was interacting with. And a lot of the videos were, you know, they were about how toxic the Voltron fandom was. And I was like, I need to fix this perception because that is not my experience with Voltron, and that is not what I want to be the lasting impression of the Voltron fandom. And
Fully agree.
even this one, which did trigger an influx of Lance commenters, there was very little that would be described as toxic in the comments, like no more than the average post. So yeah, I knew about Clance. I just did not know about Dirty Laundry.
It's being in the
That's so
trenches
cool.
of that fandom was
Yep.
and one of the happiest, like, from touching back to what you were saying about the fandom, like, a lot of people say it's a toxic fandom, but it was one of my happiest moments in a fandom space because it was just so fun and engaging and everyone was memeing it up. It was great. Like, on my side of the fence, I don't know about anyone else, but like, I really enjoyed the fandom back then when it was seasonal.
I can say when I was then engaging with the fandom as part of my job, it was super pleasant. It was super fun. And it was one of the things that World Event Productions was happiest with us about, is that people are excited about Voltron again. Like, everything in the comments started with like some cautious optimism, and then eventually just people were engaging with us just as fans. And that was one of their main goals going into this, because they wanted to just rehabilitate the fandom and the relationship between fans and Voltron, knowing that there was a movie on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I remember when I was, I recently graduated from college, but when I was in my last semester, I remember I was going on my phone and I saw that Voltron Official was posting again, and it mostly stuck with Defender of the Universe, and I was like, oh, okay, they're becoming more active. I heard little talks about the movie, whatever, and then I saw Legendary Defender posts. I was like, oh, we're talking about Legendary Defender again. And then it was just kind of like I was like, oh, I was excited. But I was like, oh, I wonder like what they're kind of doing. And then it really made me happy seeing, the official Voltron account posting about Legendary Defender, which was the
Yes.
first iteration that I fell in love with,
Same.
as if the show was still going on. And it was just so great. And, we're so thankful that, it's in the place that it is now. So
So what happened there
yeah.
was when we started plotting out the first month of content, I was told we couldn't use Legendary Defender because it was co-owned by DreamWorks, and
Yeah.
so technically anything we posted about Legendary Defender, DreamWorks would have to co-sign on, and no one at DreamWorks was in there was no Voltron contact anymore at DreamWorks, so no one would ever co-sign it. So we make a whole month worth of content based on based on Defender Universe primarily, and then a little bit of other parts of the Voltron fandom. And then in one of our first meetings with World Event Productions, while we're presenting this stuff, I bring up the fact that this is one of the rules that we can't use Legendary Defender. And Bob's like, "Oh no, we have a great relationship with DreamWorks. Just go ahead." And it's like, all right, I don't know where that rule came from then, but starting in month 2, suddenly we started bringing in a lot of Legendary Defender stuff.
That's so awesome. So cool. All right.
All right.
Along those lines, so I can bring up this post with Karan. So this is
Oh my gosh.
Karan from every different series. And it is a Duran Duran album cover that we are
Yes.
parodying there. And this is one of those things where a comment that I made offhand, thinking it was pretty innocent, it ended up going in a totally different direction. And that was the next time you see the character, would you like
I remember
serious
this.
Karan or comedy Karan? And a lot of the comments were just like, what do you mean the next time? And I guess there was just a contingent of Voltron fans who'd never thought that there could be a Voltron reboot. Like by then, as the picture shows, we were on our 4th reboot. If you're fans from the 80s, you knew Voltron came back every 10 years or so. But this was new to Legendary Defender fans, and they were really glomming on to the idea like, is this an announcement? Is there more Voltron coming? And it's like, no, it was just things get rebooted. Like this is a fact of the industry. And so, trying to explain that stuff to the fans while still being engaging, not talking down to them, like that was a real, just a juggling act on my part in the comments.
Yeah, because there's
That's
a lot
awesome.
of rumors every year. There's always a rumor every year that there's going to be a season 9.
The
And
Voltron scare, yeah.
yeah. And as someone that worked in like production, like TV entertainment sort of industry, I mean the crew has already moved on and they're working on Avatar projects and stuff like that. So logically, that's not going to be a thing unless it's completely under wraps and there's an NDA that we just absolutely don't know about. But the rumor always spins, so that comment right there would have made people go, "Oh, there is a season 9."
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love the Duran Duran reference. Very cool.
I was just gonna say, I was like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't even take full credit for it because that was a name of an episode of Voltron Force.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got
Wow.
this one. Yeah.
Oh, did you know that?
I knew like the episode, but it like didn't like click for me of like, oh, that could do like a Duran Duran thing. So
Mhm.
it's so cool.
All right, should I go back to my list?
Yes.
Yeah.
What you got?
All right, so this is my next
Absolutely.
screen highlight one. This is when Daniel
Oh.
Quintoy was announced. Was like the casting was announced, and so this was such a weird caption to craft because if you read the headline, it's Tom Holland's West End understudy. Like if he had any other credit, if he was in any TV show or movie, that would replace the whole chunk about Tom Holland because this has nothing to do with Tom Holland. But
Yes.
people at the Hollywood Reporter and we had the same struggle of like, this kid has no established credentials except that being Tom Holland's understudy on Broadway is huge,
Yes.
but hard to explain.
Yeah.
And so what they did and what we had to do in the comments, like people were like, I'm sorry, is Tom Holland in that movie? Because people will not read a whole headline. They'll see Tom Holland, they'll see Voltron, and they'll be like, that's not Tom Holland in the picture. Also, that picture is about 3 years old at this point, but Daniel is almost completely off the internet. And so finding a more current picture is very hard. So people were judging him for like, is this, Voltron Jr.? Like, what is happening here? So the fact that he was the first member of the cast announced, and the fact that Voltron announces a movie in production every couple of years, so no one was sure how seriously to take the most recent announcement that there was a Voltron movie. So this was really the announcement that there's a Voltron movie in production. Casting has started, and we've got our first actor, and nobody knows who this guy is, like on any level. Like socially, he's not on the internet. His credits, almost nothing, except for this one real mouthful of a credit. So that was the big challenge there. And within a week, Henry Cavill was announced, and then we could be like, you know who this is, and we could have a lot of fun with Henry Cavill related memes. Actually, I could pull up my favorite Henry Cavill related one we did, which was we were pretending like we were just saying, let's just rate Henry's looks, but these are all obviously Defender of the Universe coded, and like slowly more Defender of the Universe coded as you go through the pictures. So yeah, this was an ideal casting announcement that we could have fun with, and we could start doing more references. The same thing when the director was announced, and it's like he's the director of Dodgeball and Meet the Robinsons. No, what's the name of that movie?
Meet the Robinsons.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it is Meet the Robinsons. Okay,
I love that.
yeah. So now I could start making memes about that. But when we just had that 1 week where Daniel was the only news related to the Voltron movie, it's like there's only so much I can do with this.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good that they casted like not your typical Hollywood star type thing. But
Right.
then that also makes it difficult when you're trying to promote them.
Yes.
Like, look who this guy is. They're like, ooh, so.
Yeah, well, and when the full cast was announced, there's like a whole bunch of recognizable names from all kinds of different credits that we could have made content about. Daniel was really just the one outlier in that group, and just happened to be the first one and the only one for about a week.
Yeah, I remember when the full cast was announced. I actually, when I was younger, I used to watch the show called The Librarians, which John Kim is in, and that show got me like I had like a friend who was like, "You should watch Voltron if you like this show," and so I watched Voltron, and now it's a kind of a full circle moment because I'm like, wow, I loved him in this, and now he's in a Voltron movie. So when I saw the cast list, I was like, oh my god. So I think I'm pretty hopeful personally. I'm pretty hopeful about the movie, and I'm very excited to have like a new Voltron installation after, about like 10 years or so. So
Yeah, I have no idea what state the movie is in now. I believe it's wrapped filming, and so we just need to wait for them to announce how it's going to be released, when, where. So yeah, now I had the inside scoop and now I don't, and so it's like a weird feeling of like, where's the Voltron news?
Yeah.
It's like you're left off the tail end of all of it, and you're like, no, I was in the middle of all the goss, please.
All right, I've got one more green highlighted one. So this one is just kind of showing the how things can just be so timely, and some of the other challenges that we face, because Snoop Dogg randomly on his social media account just shared the intro to the Defender of the Universe show. And so we were like, that's cool. We're on Snoop Dogg's radar, so we should make a post about that. But we can't just share what he shared because it's just our intro. And so we needed to find some way of incorporating Snoop Dogg as a fan of Voltron into the post. So I spent a day just looking for any time that Snoop Dogg has referenced Voltron and see if I can make a soundbite out of it. And I found this video, just him chatting with a friend on YouTube. And the title is something like Eagles something 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 Voltron. I'm like, all right, I will watch the whole video. It's only 15 minutes. And most of it is him talking about how eagles hunt and seeming to be like personally insulted by the fact that, animals, are sneaky and stuff. And he was like, you think you know a guy. Like that seemed to be the tone of how he felt about eagles. And I'm like, when is this going to get to Voltron? And in the last minute, he just kind of brings up, oh man, remember all the 80s robot shows? And I was like, okay. That's us. So what are you going to say about Voltron? And, the last minute of the video is draining, and it's like, he hasn't brought up Voltron yet. He's talking a lot about Transformers. And then the last line of the video is Snoop saying, oh, and Voltron, he was my N-word. And I was like, well, I cannot use that soundbite. I get the sentiment. I appreciate that Snoop Dogg feels that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
so that's when instead we threw this together of just like Snoop Dogg and Voltron in the same picture, and then a week later he appeared at the Republican National Party and like lost half his fans. So it was like for a
Oh,
brief
yeah.
moment, it was cool that Snoop Dogg liked Voltron.
Wow.
It's like
Yeah.
hopping on the
Wow.
trend and then the train crashes and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
Thanks
okay.
for the content. That's so funny.
Oh, oh
All right,
my gosh.
I have plenty more clips and plenty more stories, but are there any questions from chat or anything that we should be covering?
Guys, any questions?
I don't think so.
Well, Miss Mullet brings up Keith's hair, which is very fitting.
Oh, yeah.
There was the Keith's Hair
Yep.
Instagram
Mhm.
post. Yeah, all right, let me do this one. So
Oh
this
boy.
was when I was starting to get the vibe of how we could be weird in a way that the fandom can appreciate. So yeah,
Love it.
Keith started his mullet to help him choose a new do, and so I just had Vivian, who did our art, give us various different new looks for Keith.
I love the Sailor Moon.
And this was a very
Wow.
popular post. There we go. We got
Yeah.
almost 14,000 likes on it.
That's amazing.
Which one's your
Oh yeah, and
favorite?
the Sailor Moon is obviously the best one.
Absolutely.
Not just because it's the most absurd, but like the red matches the outfit and it flows very nicely with the rest of his look.
Yes, it matches the jacket panels as well. It's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to pick a hairstyle for Keith, what would you pick?
You asking chat? Oh wait, somebody just changed
yeah.
their profile picture to bald Keith.
That was the original plan, if you could believe it. Everybody
Yeah.
was gonna be
I'm gonna have like an
Keith.
army of just bald Keiths in the chat. But I mean, like, Ryan, if you were to pick any hairstyle for Keith,
If I had to, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me or
Yeah.
chat.
no.
To give Keith any hairstyle, I don't know. I
Any.
guess mine, so I could cosplay as Keith more easily.
That's fair.
You
Yeah.
don't have to change your hair or anything.
Oh.
I love it. And as a Sailor
I
Moon,
put him in like a
Keith's
ponytail.
alley, like,
Sure.
really appreciate
Like
it. as a Sailor
he
Moon.
can get a ponytail out of the My Chemical Romance hairdo here.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. Tara, do you want to go through the other social posts that we
Um,
sort of highlighted?
Yeah. So some of them I think you have on your list, but we have some in
Sure.
our presentation that I can
Okay. I'll
just
stop
pull up.
sharing.
So then I could just share my screen again. And we'll skip the ones obviously that we've gone through already.
Yep.
So this one, you
Yes.
mentioned to Indy and I that you had a little anecdote about this one. So
Well, that like I baked that cake that's in the picture, and I made the
Mhm.
recipe. Like I probably could have just taken somebody else's recipe, but I don't do that. So I researched how to make a new cupcake recipe, and then did all the highlights, but made sure that I was doing something unique with this. So I also special ordered some black food dye to make sure that we can really get that space look to it. And yeah, so this whole thing, I have the behind the scenes on my versions of those pictures. Let me see if I can call those up.
Ooh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a good example of how I would put together a post. So in this case, this one was especially elaborate. So I grabbed this image, which I then shared with Vivian and our art team to show like, this is the vibe we're going for. We're trying to do just a 50s style cooking thing. I showed them the picture of Nanny. That I thought we could use. These are the pictures of the ingredients that I took. And again, I did some research into how to properly frame just a thing of ingredients. It bugs me how much space I left in the top right corner here. So I if I was better at this, that space would be filled up with something properly. But in any case, this gives an idea of the proportions that you need, including a whole wad of butter. And then you read the recipe and it tells you how you do it. This was my original gimped together version of it. Let me just change what I'm sharing so you can see that. So yeah, so this is the kind of thing I would put together. And you see like Paige's hair is cut off. You can see the white lines. It's very basic version of what then Vivian was able to put together, which is these that are just like the ones that you can see on the Instagram page. So there's the cover that's going for the vibes that I was looking for. And then we've got the ingredients with the list. And some very basic baking instructions. To do this recipe, you do already have to know how to put together a cupcake. But once you do, then it gives you everything you need. So yeah, this was a full, beginning to end recipe that I thought would be fun. Did not do very well. The social media logistics people were like, yeah, no, the recipe stuff rarely does well on social media. So I put a lot of extra effort into something that had I just asked people ahead of time, they would have told me not to bother.
Hey, listen, I'll try it. Once I officially move into my new place, I will try
All
making
right, thank
these.
you.
All right.
They are delicious. I really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we move on, chat
yeah.
is multiplying with the bold Keith and our Sailor
Oh
Moon
no.
Keith. So I'm looking for this. Keep that energy going, chat. Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I'll always make time for bald Keith. Don't worry about it. This post, Indy and I picked out. It's
Okay.
kind of based off Stardew Valley. We just
Awesome.
kind of wanted to know, like, with this, and then I have these, also that
Okay.
kind of tie into other IP. How does that kind of work on a production standpoint? Like, do you need permission in order to do these kind of posts, or is it just kind of fall under parody and you can kind of get away with it that way?
So I will get to that question, but there is a lot to talk about that Peppers one. So
Yes.
the
Oh,
Stardew
okay.
Valley one.
Please, I love
Because
study.
first of all, the point of this post started as talking about the peppers because somebody made a new strain of peppers and called them Voltron because they had a
Yes.
wide variety of colors. There's purple, a little bit of green, orange, and red. So we don't get much blue, although the purple is a little bit blue leaning and a little black leaning. So that was the original point of the post. And then I talked to Vivian of like, how do we make this more interesting than just a picture of peppers and hope that people catch on that it's Voltron related? So then she came up with the idea of Stardew Valley, which was, popular then, still popular, but like it was at a popularity peak at the time. But then, of course, the struggle there is that it depicts Lance farming, and that is a controversial statement within the Voltron community because that is how his story wraps up, and people would rather he be, a space adventurer who goes on to save the universe. So there's just like, it's like a reference within a reference and also a reference to the fandom that was controversial. So this was just like way more going on than the average post. And yet, mostly because of how Vivian was able to deliver on that Stardew Valley reference, the whole thing worked.
Nice. Yeah, I love the little, like, Lance Stardew design and all that stuff.
it's
I thought that
cute.
was,
I love the
so
skin.
cute.
Yeah, like it's immediately recognizable as Lance
Yes.
and as Stardew Valley, and that's impressive.
And this
And then
will
talking
be,
about
right?
the other,
All right. Yeah.
yes. So no, we don't need to get permission to do these. They are parodies, they are references, and generally these are the kind of things that if they get picked up on by those official accounts, will get shared and will get celebrated if it's something that they want associated with them. So not only is this not discouraged, it's actually encouraged. That Johnny Bravo Voltron one was mainly because it's like I've never done anything serving that generation of fans, and I know Voltron, it was only like, it was between Third Dimension and Voltron Force, so Voltron was not super popular then. So we'll just throw it out there to see if that's a chunk of the fandom that will come out for this kind of stuff. And no, it did not. That was one of our worst performing posts ever, even though I still enjoy the play on words and enjoy Voltron without the lion legs. Whereas the Blue Lion one, the Bluey one, was super popular just because Bluey is universal.
Bluey.
Yeah. I remember I saw the Johnny Bravotron or Voltron, and I was so excited. In the caption, it said something about like short King Voltron. I was like, you get it. So, because I kind of grew up on the older, like I'm kind of younger, but I did grow up on the old like Saturday morning cartoons, and so like I did watch like some Johnny Bravo because of my parents, and so it was just so like fun to see that. And so I'm sad that it was the like worst performing, but I liked it. So.
And then just talking about the last two are very different. So the Svendy's one was a placeholder. It was any time that we could come up with just a very basic and not time specific idea, we would just throw it into the vault. And then if something got canceled at the last minute or something was planned, and then something in the news became relevant that made it not a good time to post a thing like that, we would pull it out of the vault. So Svendy's was just like, in case of emergency, release Svendy's. Whereas the Secret, that one was like, oh shoot, Wicked's out this week, we should do something tied into it, and then finding the Voltron connection. So it's like, oh yeah, those first couple of episodes when the mystery of Pidge's identity was a real highlight of it, and so we incorporated those together, and that one was super popular. So like that one hit exactly when we needed it to.
Yeah. No, I love when that came out, I was like, oh, the connections. Oh my goodness. And so I wonder if they're gonna do a one for the next Wicked that's coming out soon. I
Not
wonder
on
if
my
they'll try
plate
to tie
anymore,
in
so
on that.
maybe.
Yeah. All right.
I can show you one that this is the kind of thing that we could have gotten in trouble for. If you let
Okay.
me screen share.
Yeah. I just got jump
So-
scared by emo Keith in the chat.
So this the Voltron reunion, because that's
yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I
Josh
remember
and
this.
Steven here. This one we could have gotten in trouble for because I was just straight up using video footage from a thing that we do not own, that we were a couple of steps removed from. And Voltron is producing the Voltron movie. And so this could have been like, hey, what are you doing? You can't just steal our stuff. So making whole new art that parodies another brand was totally fine. This one, I showed it to Bob. He liked it enough that he was like, if our friends at Amazon have a problem, we'll ask for forgiveness.
Wow. You know, I remember that post, and I was like, well, ask for, forgiveness, not permission.
So
Very-
this was one of the rare videos that I did, because I do not have any video editing experience. And so I took forever doing the little head nods and whatever. That probably could have been done in half the time or less by our video department, but then I would have had to place the order for the video department, and that gets expensive, and it gets
Yes.
a little bit, there's conversation with my boss because the contract didn't actually cover video beyond TikTok. And so this had to be something that a writer did, even though it's clearly, it's beyond what a writer's job should be. But it being a little bit bad is also part of the appeal.
Yeah.
Just out
Yeah.
of curiosity, did Josh Keaton ever interact with this one? Because I know that he's quite active in interacting. with
Yeah,
some of
he
his-
must have. Let me see. Usually Josh one gets so many replies.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Surely there's a Josh Keaton reaction. I
Because I feel like
interviewed Josh
out of
Keaton,
all
and
the
he was so
cast,
pleasant.
he's such a good guy.
Mm.
It's not showing up, even though I'm fairly certain that he did reply at some point.
Okay.
I just don't want to. There were a lot of comments on this one. I'll just keep scrolling. We've
I
got
remember
nothing
I
else to do,
saw
right? Oh, no.
I saw a bunch of clips of Invincible on Twitter. And then someone posted like Voltron, like comparing, because Stephen Yeun obviously voices Keith.
Yeah.
And someone was like, "What is this? What show is this?" I was like,
Really?
"You guys don't know what Voltron is?"
Where were you?
It was
Like,
a
oh
moment
my
in time.
goodness.
Rock from 2016
Yeah, where
to
were you?
2019?
All
My
right.
goodness.
I'm giving up looking for it, even though I'm fairly certain he did reply at some point to it.
Maybe it was on a story or something like that.
Yeah, that's possible.
Oh, it could be. Yeah.
I just have to let
I
it
love
go.
I love all the
Refuse
Voltron
to.
mentioned comments.
Yeah.
So good.
All right.
All right. I'll let you share again.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Ooh. All right. So this post, when this post came out,
Oh.
I remember it being relatively controversial because, for Legendary Defender, Hunk, Lance, and Keith didn't have canonical last names. And so I remember everyone would just kind of going off their last names from previous iterations. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, they're addressing it. And so if you had any, thoughts about this, about the response from it, anything like that.
Sure, yeah, a lot. So, because I was confused when I was first reading it and people were throwing last names out there, I was like, they never had last names. Like, Pidge is the only one that got a last name in the new series, and everyone else was just going by their one name, like they always had. And so, in researching it, it's a combination of references to Beastkin Go Lion, which is the original anime, and a fairly obscure Voltron comic book, which gave them the last names of the characters from Beastkin Go Lion. So the fact that the fandom was so desperate for last names for these characters that they went to the most obscure but still official last names that they were ever given in any kind of official media, like that fascinated me. Like that inspired this whole post. And the fact that I believe most of people believe that Keith's last name was pronounced Kogane, even though it would be Kogane because, again, it's a Japanese surname. So, like, yeah, there was a lot of controversy in here, but this was actually one where I wrote it knowing that there would be some shocked reactions and ready for that kind of engagement with the fans.
Yeah, I definitely remember when we got like the official pronunciation guide for his name, because I know a lot of people pronounced it like that, like Cogaine instead of Kogane. But yeah, this was so interesting, like seeing, you know, because it
Yeah.
comes from such an obscure place, and it's just so cool that it's like, oh, it's just in the zeitgeist of our, you know, vocabulary now. Like that's just his
Yeah,
last
well,
name.
and that's also the power of wikis. Here, actually, can I take over? I just want to
Yeah,
show
yeah, yeah.
one of my favorite comments I ever got was on this post about the Pathfinder wiki, which, here we go. So did not do super well, but one of the top comments, there we go. So this one's just saying, I've never seen a show or anything actually show such genuine appreciation for their fans, and it's incredible to see.
Aw.
And yeah, like that is, like I felt seen because I
Yeah.
do genuinely love this. I loved working on it as a fan, and the fan created resources helped me more than a lot of official resources. Like, again, because Bob wouldn't tell me when they've got a big RPG coming out,
Yeah.
so I really relied on the Voltron wiki, and I just felt like the need to make a whole post giving them a shout out, saying like, this is keeping Voltron alive. This is keeping people connected, keeping people informed. And again, like, no one would have known that Keith was named Kogane in a comic book had it not been for a Voltron wiki article.
Mm. And it's also that
So yeah,
kind of
shout out to them once again. They are invaluable.
I think it's also that kind of thing where it's like it's showing your hard work is paying off, because social media is such an underappreciated sort of field. There's a lot of work in like ideas and creative execution that you need to do. Like I did work in social media marketing for a little bit. Oh, it's very, very intense, because you got to be reactive too, like the wicked post and everything. So I think, yeah, from that span of which you were running it, like it was very much the most engaged I've ever seen the account. And the fandom were like keeping tabs on it, So it was good.
I turned post notifications on.
Yes.
It's like I need to know what's going on.
Well, like
That's
the increase in traffic was like an incredible metric. Let me just make sure I quote it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give me a second while I load this up. But it was all totally organic. That was part of our business model, that we were not paying to spread the word around. And so Voltron's, there we go. Engagement went from 0.72 to 2,100%. Like
Whoa.
yeah, it's a 5
Whoa.
decimal point jump after we took over, which, granted, it was a fairly dead account when we did take over. So it's not like that 0.72 was like the high before we got there. That was like the lows because nobody was really running the account. But the sharp incline was 100% because of the work we were putting in. And like, I've never seen that kind of number in response to engagement number increases. And I take great pride in that. And I put it on my resume, like that specific statistic.
It's such a great statistic for a resume. It really is.
Absolutely.
That's so awesome. All right, moving on. So we talked about this post. So I will move on to the next one. This one. Just want to kind of get the backstory on this, and
Yeah, so I regularly fell down rabbit holes, and one of them that really fascinated me was the Keith Love Hippos. I think somebody had just made a Moondang reference in response to a unrelated Keith post, and I was like, why would they make that reference? And so I started looking it up, found out about that weird, what was it? In the official
Paladin's Handbook
guide, yeah, there was the multiple choice question of like, which lion should you fly? And like, if you were going to take an animal into the stasis chamber with you, which would it be? And apparently hippos mean you're qualified to fly red, and Keith was flying red at the time. And so the fandom was like, that means, just doing the math here, Keith he freaking loves hippos. And so then Moondang gets in the news, and it's like, all right, I came up with the idea of Keith stealing Moondang. And then it was Vivian again, who did a lot of the art on this. So it was basically Vivian or Maisha, and I tend to give Vivian more shout outs, but Maisha is also responsible for a lot of the really good ones. Yeah, so I sent her one, and it was just like a plain background. I think it was Keith actually at the zoo picking up Mudang, and she was like, "Can I do a little something special with this one?" It's like, "Sure, Vivian, you know art better than I do." And so it came back with that one, and I was like, "I would have never come up with that. Let's see how it performs." And it performed very, very well. It was,
Yeah.
I think, our most popular static image for the month, and just one of our best of all time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so funny because I remember when that handbook came out and, doing the quiz in the back of the book, and it's just like, well, if 1 + 1 is 2, then Keith loves hippos. So it's like,
It's the only answer.
Exactly. But no, this one was so fun, and I love the little bow that was put on
Yeah.
Mudang. I think
Yes.
that's a very nice touch.
I saw a lot of comments
All
about
right.
Mudang being the bravest warrior.
Oh my God.
He was our bravest warrior. Like Keith would say that about Mudang.
Yeah. Instead of Clyzap, it's Mudang
Literally.
in front of the castle. Oh my
Originals who?
goodness,
We have
that's so funny.
hippos.
All right. So we talked about, you know,
Yeah.
Bald Keith, as there's an influx of Bald Keith in our chat at the moment.
Yes. Bald
and
Keith's taken over.
yeah, kind of just going back to this, I mentioned that I had this in the slideshow. Is there anything like, I know you mentioned a little bit about it, but like, could you share with us like how you were asked to handle kind of like shipping related comments or questions while managing like the Voltron official account? Because we know shipping's a big part of every fandom. And so, just like how on
Some
your
more than
side you were
others.
told.
Yes.
Yeah, some more than others, definitely. Yeah.
I'll just sum up what I've already said, because there wasn't really much more to it. It was just that in
Yeah.
researching the fandom, this seemed to be like a sticking point of some of the problematic behavior. And so it was just, it's best if we avoid this. And as I saw, anytime that it did get alluded to, it would take over a comment section. And if I wasn't prepared for it to take over the comment section, then I had to like figure out my voice for commenting on it, make sure that it's acknowledging their fandom, but trying to cap the conversations any way I could, or as quickly as I could. And otherwise, like, to never make one that specifically triggers that kind of response. I know this is not the fandom that I should be telling. Was not we were actively trying to avoid your engagement on our posts,
Okay.
but it was just what we were trying to, just the tone of the page we were trying to keep.
Yeah, of course. And like the professionalism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense. But I did think that this response was very funny. So that's why I included it in
So that was
this one.
that was part of the voice. We were trying to be sincere, and just anytime we could remove the veil and just address something that we had done as obviously the people in charge of the Voltron official. Although sometimes I would reply as though Voltron was the one in charge of the social medias.
Yes.
But yeah, anytime that we needed a sincere response, that's kind of my specialty. I am hard to do anything but sincere.
Nice. Very cool. All right.
Love.
All right. So Indy.
Okay. Well, easy as question. What is the best part of being the social media manager for Voltron?
I got paid to watch Voltron. I got paid to overthink about Voltron, and just to anytime I could come up with something. And like the exciting things was when I would just discover something, and I knew exactly what content it would be about, and I knew what to look forward to in the comments. So let me see if I've got the link to it. The one, no, I didn't grab it. The one about the Golden Girls, that Lotor's generals.
Oh, right.
I love.
All of their names were originally the Golden Girls' names spelt backwards with like, paired letters kept together. And so, yeah, when I found out about that, I was like, oh, we could put Golden Girls up there. Golden Girls are like, they're very popular right now. They're probably going to be popular forever. And so we can make content about that. It's a weird fact, so I got to make sure that I phrase it properly. But as soon as I do, I got to make sure I've got a bunch of Golden Girls references lined up so that when people start replying with them, I can reply right back with them. So yeah, moments like that were super fun when I anticipated something that would be popular and would be reacted to in a certain way, and then it went off exactly the way I expected it to.
Mm.
Yeah. Man, if I could be paid to watch Voltron and think about it, I would be a millionaire. But no, that's just so cool. So awesome. All right. Did you have plans to post additional content before the contract ended? Like, were there some stuff that you had in the vault that wasn't used, or just kind of posts that you personally wish you could have put on the
So
account.
I don't think there was anything in the vault at that point. So you'll see like static content ends at a point, and then there's just a bunch of the TikTok syndicated ones. So that was because we already had the TikTok stuff, and so as soon as the TikTok manager, which was not me, I managed Instagram and Facebook. So and then she would syndicate over to Instagram. So as soon as she found out that this was it, she just scheduled all of them out for the next few weeks of content just to go through everything that we had. So as far as stuff that was designed, like, let me double check. There must have been something, but I know that the one that was in the works that we never got to do was the roast of Lotor, where I just had a list of clips of Lotor getting insulted, and I was going to edit them together into one long montage. The longer, the better. Let me see. That's weird. Usually, sorry, I just separate things usually into
Okay.
like
No,
what
it's
have
fine.
we used and what haven't we. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's anything in here. What was this?
Chat is loving this roast of Lotor. I'm just telling you right now.
So I didn't expect that one to go over with Legendary Defender folks because, you know, we have a much more complicated relationship with Lotor than Defender of the Universe
Yes.
fans. So nothing as far as finals that were actually made. Let me see if there was anything that was in the
Someone said in chat,
no.
please tell me that there's a L'Oreal joke in there.
So there was already a very popular Lotorial meme that was going around, and I, as much as possible, didn't want to just repeat exact jokes. And it was the perfect joke. There was nothing else I could do with it, and so
It's too crispy.
yeah, so I let that one
Yeah.
go.
I remember in I believe it's the second handbook. Or no, it might have been the first one. It's one of the handbooks, and it's where it has a photo of Lotor, and you know the paladins were able to like write in little notes and whatever. And Lance wrote this like whole little paragraph talking about his hair and like what shampoo he used and all this stuff. I was like, yeah. So they like in the handbook kind of made like a Lotoriel joke, but like couldn't obviously say it.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was super funny.
All right, so I did find one that never went up and never got to Vivian. So if I can just take
Okay.
over, I can share that with people.
Yeah, yeah.
Fun.
Of course.
It's not great. It's a wedding invitation to Lotor and Alora's wedding, and it is just from an episode where he was having one of his many fantasies about marrying Alora.
He was too powerful. Yeah. Lotor was too powerful. Oh, cute. Love.
Yeah, that looked pretty basic, but that's my art skills. So this is one that I had planned for one of the thirds of the month, because every third of the month I would release something that was Voltron Third Dimension related. Just
Voltron
because
Third
that's how
Dimension.
my brain works. Sorry. So this was the cover for a video of just the heads attacking a roe beast and flying off with it. Like they fire like cables from their mouths, wrap it up, and then fly away with it.
Wow.
That's really funny.
That's funny. All right. So we have the next question. So Indy, if you want to take this one.
Okay. Did you ever work or meet with the crew of Legendary Defender?
So only with Josh. We did a 5-part interview that I originally was planning on posting as a single interview, and then it would have been broken up into 5 parts on TikTok, but I was encouraged to do shorter ones, and I do think it hurt the overall product. I kind of wish I had posted it as this single thing where he talks about 5 topics, but it was one uninterrupted video. But anyway, yeah, it was a super fun opportunity, and he like was constantly posting and encouraging us on the Voltron page. So I just reached out to him one day and like, would you like to do this? Like, I've had this idea in my head of like the Voice of Voltron mini interviews that we didn't really have a platform for, but we could probably squeeze into TikTok and Instagram if we kept it really tight. And he was right on board. And so we scheduled it. I chatted with him for about half an hour and turned it into some content that I really enjoyed, even though it unfortunately didn't really find a wide audience.
Yeah.
Man,
It's so interesting. Yeah, I'd love to meet Josh one day.
he seems like the nicest.
Yeah, and he's been so, involved in the fandom over the last since 6 years. So he's definitely been like the voice of that, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we almost did the same thing with Tyler Labine, because he also does a lot of posts on hunk related stuff, and so I reached out to him and I said, would you like to do this same thing? And he was like, yeah, I love hunk. I've got like a soft spot in my heart for him. and things just kind of fizzled out. And as just a social media guy, I never wanted to push him too hard. So
Yeah.
it's possible that he needed one more poke and then we could have made it happen, but I didn't want to be the guy that poked too hard and just upset him and maybe he would stop posting on our stuff. So yeah, that would have been nice, but unfortunately it didn't get to happen.
Yeah. Well,
The chat is going
asking's
off.
the hardest part.
The chat is going off saying, "Can we get Josh in here next?" Joke, and then someone wrote,
Yeah.
"Josh into you next."
If anyone would, I bet it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
that's
right.
awesome.
Next question. What was your relationship like with the Koplars? Did you interact with them directly? How was that kind of, because I know you mentioned previously that you met with, World Event Productions and stuff. So like kind of what were those meetings like?
Yeah, they were great. So the only Coppler working on Voltron right now is Bob, and he and I had a great relationship. So he and I are about the same age, and so he also grew up on Voltron at the same time I did. He obviously had an inside scoop on it, but like when I would post something that would be a bit of a deep cut for Defenders of the Universe, he always appreciated it, and in a way that like he would see the TikToks put together by the much younger audience and leaning into Legendary Defender, and most of his reactions were like, "Okay, will that be good? Okay, good." But my stuff, he got it. He actually understood the references and appreciated them. I actually, and here I can go back to my thing because one of the posts was something that meant a lot to him and to me.
Yeah.
So if I could take over the share.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that is this one here. It's called "We See Ourselves in the Heroes We Watch." So that's my daughter.
Oh, I love that
I
one.
took this picture
Aw.
in her bedroom. That poster is still on her wall, and he showed that to the director of the Voltron movie and said, like, "This is what we're going for. These are the fans that we need to keep in mind." And so, like, more than any of the other posts that I ever put together, like this one really touched him, and I was happy. I like again a very personal one for me, and so the fact that it worked so much for him was really touching.
I remember watching an interview with Lauren and Joaquin years ago. I forget like who was interviewing them, but I remember when Lauren was talking about Allura, and she was like, "When I grew up, I watched Voltron, and I looked up to Allura as this like female powerhouse because that's kind of that's what she is." And for the time, I feel like it's so revolutionary. And so seeing this picture, I remember when this picture came out, I was like, "Oh my God, the cycle repeats itself," So I think it's really heartwarming. So.
So the one behind the scenes thing about that is that I have two daughters, and only one of them has shown up on the Voltron social media account, and the other one was always bugging me like, "When are you going to do a meme about me?" And it's like, I'm not trying to work my family into all the memes. I'm trying to come up with the memes, and if one of my daughters happens to fit into it, I will use her for the content.
That's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so great. Who did the art for the paladin armor? I think it's so cute.
That was Vivian. I can
Awesome.
show you my original version, which again, not nearly as good. I gotta remember what month it was. I'm gonna say no. It's probably not worth finding my original version of it, but I can say so. The poster is not actually that size in her room. That's a smaller poster, and so Vivian made it bigger so that it fit the space better and it matched with my daughter's eye line, because my daughter was constantly trying to look at the camera, and I was constantly like, look at the poster and taking the picture as quickly as possible. So like I took about 50 pictures, and about 2 of them were what I was going for, and one of them she managed to fix like that. Yeah, I'm not sure when we posted this exactly, so I won't be able to find my version of it. But anyway, it's the same vibe, just not as good. Like Vivian added the hearts and the emojis, like that was her addition. And just she eliminated some stuff from the countertop there so that more focus was on the poster and my daughter.
Wow.
So great. I was just because I was searching for posts to look at, and I came across this one, and I was like, wow, it's so it's just
Earnest?
so great. It's so heartfelt, and I loved it.
I actually was watching Voltron at the time with that daughter, and so it was like a very personal and very honest post.
Nice. Very cool. All right. I will get my screen back up. All right. Next question.
Ooh.
What's your favorite moment in Voltron, old and or new?
I think it was in Reunion, just the whole
Oh,
episode, because it paid off a long-term storyline. It was like ridiculously emotional for, could be a kids show that had like serious undertones, but like this one was heartbreaking and raw and just
yeah.
completely focused on a single character. Like I don't know if any of the other paladins even show up in that episode. And so just following Pidge, following through the end of that storyline, which then launched a whole bunch of other storylines. Like often if you resolve a character's motivation, then that character just kind of is stuck there and feels awkward. But no, finding Matt led to a whole bunch of new storylines and changed the direction of the show. So like that is the perfect example of how long-term storytelling can work even in a kids show or animation. It's not strictly for kids, but clearly
Hmm.
that is the perception of this kind of show. And it's like, no, this is like some of the best storytelling of any TV show I've ever watched, and like definitely my favorite moment. And one of the reasons that Pidge is, I will just say, my favorite paladin on Legendary Defender.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I about that episode, I remember there was this, it was before the season came out and they did this teaser in South Korea, and
Okay.
they accidentally teased Matt being like alive and like him fighting
Mm.
with Pidge. And I remember when that leaked, and then I was like, is that real? And then I remember when the season came out, the Netflix title card showed like
Yes.
Matt and Pidge together, like in the present.
Oh,
And
geez.
I remember watching they changed it after like 2 days or something. But I remember watching the episode and like, the whole thing where you think he's dead and all that stuff. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, dang, that would have hit so much harder if Netflix didn't have the title card.
Hmm.
And like the leak that I saw. But no, I showed it to my friend who I was watching it with, and she didn't know anything. And so I showed her, and she like was in tears. And that episode really holds a place in my heart because
Because
I love
I
Pitch
think
too.
Pidge cries for a solid minute at his grave
Mhm.
Yes.
before figuring
Yep.
out that, wait a second, there's a code on this tombstone. I guess
Hmm.
spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen this.
Yeah.
Guys.
But yeah, like they linger and like really make you feel it. And even though it's like halfway through the episode and some part of your brain should logically be saying, well, this can't be the end of the episode because what are we going to do for the rest of the episode?
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
it like pulled me in. I was not aware of how much time was left in the episode. All I knew was like, this is it. Matt's officially dead,
Yes.
Yeah.
for about a minute.
And Bex did such a good job kind of conveying that
Yes.
emotion too. It was so phenomenal. It really was.
Bex was so incredible in their performance. And the reunion was one of those episodes. Thankfully, I didn't see the thumbnail or the leak at the time. So when I
Hmm.
got to the grave fake out, I was like, no, no, no. And then I was like sobbing for a full minute before they like revealed that, oh no, these are coordinates. And I was like, oh, let's go. And I feel like it's one of the storylines in Legendary Defender that fully paid off. There was a
Yeah.
couple that kind of slipped down the cracks or there was gaps, but this one was the one where it was like they really cooked in the kitchen here, like, and Hunk was there making some food. But it was just fantastic. Like, I love that episode so much.
Yeah. So the only bad thing I will say about that episode is it comes immediately after the episode where Pidge was ragging on Keith for not being there for their missions,
Yes.
and then Pidge goes on a solo mission for a
Yeah.
whole episode. Had they timed it a little bit differently, then it would have been. It was pretty much perfect. It was the perfect episode of Voltron.
For sure.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Also, Indy, I think I skipped you in the last question, so if you want to take this one.
Oh, I mean, well, he already answered it. What's your favorite Voltron character and why?
Yeah. So I don't know if I had a favorite Voltron character as a kid. I think I just liked them all, except maybe Hunk. I don't think I was a big Hunk fan as a kid, but I definitely like. I know I loved Alora, Pidge, and Keith.
Mhm.
No, sorry, Lance. Keith was just kind of there for me. And this also
Yeah.
lined up with which action figures was technically mine versus the ones that my brothers had, which was often how I figured out my favorite character in like an ensemble when I was young. But then, yeah, later on Legendary Defender, I think Pidge is the perfect balance of if it's not a Pidge episode, Pidge is contributing something meaningful or saying something emotional. Whereas like Keith has some great episodes, but if it's not a Keith episode, he's often just kind of there.
Mhm.
And Hunk has some great lines, but not a lot of great Hunk episodes. So like Pidge again, on top of being like well performed, well written, is always good in every episode.
Yeah. Pidge is a very well-rounded and very like solid character that I think they put a lot of effort into. And Pidge was my favorite when I first watched at 13. I was like, that's me. So it was really cool.
And Shiro was probably the character I had to learn to like, because I was like, well, he wasn't in my original show, so he's clearly going to get killed off any minute. It's like, why is he still here? Like, just anticipating that this was an expendable character, I refused to get invested in him. And then on a rewatch, I'm like, man, Shiro's great. Like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Shiro to me, like, so I studied media analysis, film production, that sort of stuff. So when Shiro was introduced, I'm like, oh, the mentor. Yeah, he's gonna go. And season 2 ended with him being missing in The Black Lion, and I was like, yeah, he's done. He's done. He's gone. They're gonna do a mentor sort of leadership arc after this. And then that didn't happen, because then he came back like 4 episodes later or something. And I was so confused. I was like, wait. And there was a time, I don't know if you'll know this, but like when season 3 dropped and people saw pictures of Kudon Shiro, there was a meme, the hashtag called Not My Shiro, and it was the one time that the whole fandom united to be like, who was that? That's not Shiro.
I remember that.
It was
Ugh,
incredible.
it was his haircut.
It was his haircut.
It was totally his haircut.
Yeah.
Was the haircut that different? I don't remember that.
It was like slightly shorter, and it was just it didn't look right on him.
He had
It
like
just
a
didn't.
cut, and he had like this big white little zhuzh part going on. But
The white thing was smaller, I'm pretty sure.
yes,
Yeah, someone says the floof was wrong. That's
the
well
floof
put.
was
Yes.
wrong.
Yep.
Thank you.
Correct.
4 floofs instead of 3. Man, I missed the floof investigation.
Yes, this was. I think this was when season 3 dropped, which I think was at the start of 2017-ish, or like.
It was
later
in
2017.
August of 2017.
There you go. You know off the back of your head.
I don't remember. I don't remember the exact date, but I believe it was August 7th or the 14th. I used to know them off the top of my head, but you know.
And you call yourself
I'm
a
old
fan.
enough. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
I just ship things, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, Indy, you should ask this question.
Spicy. What did you think of the final 2 seasons of Legendary Defender? Jeopardy.
So I
music.
went into the final 2 seasons knowing they were disliked, which probably lowered my expectations. And so when I did watch them, I was like, this is not as bad as I was expecting. And in fact, there's a couple of classic episodes in there. I do think that it suffered from a weak villain problem, for sure. And I think I like 8 more than 7. But
That's my opinion as well.
Yeah. I don't hate either of them. But 7 was probably the one that was wandering the most and needed to reassess its focus.
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I feel like season 7 was really building up to something, and then you get to season 8 and you're like, where's the payoff? Like, it kind of didn't feel like, just in
That
general.
was a bit of a VLD problem overall, not just those 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I feel like it was
Definitely.
the most prominent in season, probably because they were the most anticipated seasons. Like, it's the finale, like
Sure.
everything's going on. So
I do have one question kind of going off of this one. What was the consensus of the final 2 seasons like with WP, with like, The Office, kind of just like, like what were other people's opinions like while you were in it?
I don't think we really talked to WP about it. Like we made memes and posts referencing the last 2 seasons, and they were never like, there were no warnings, there were no telling us not to do that stuff. So I guess they just, as far as like the content of the episodes, they didn't have any strong feelings about them. And around The Office, I think that some of the other people on the Voltron team actually really liked the finale. And there's a couple of reels that they put up on TikTok that are just reverent towards the final moments of that series. So I never talked to them directly about it, but that just based on the content they were creating, that's the impression I got.
Yeah, I definitely think like the last 2 seasons, while there were, some issues, I do like them as individual seasons. And I'm so curious as to why, because I know the first 6 seasons are available on DVD, but seasons 7 and 8 were never made available. And if you try to, since it's off of Netflix, if you try to buy the episodes online, they don't have the last 2 seasons available.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like lost media, I suppose.
Yes.
And so I just didn't know if there was like kind of a um hesitancy toward the final two seasons because they're not really available for streaming or purchase anymore.
No, I think that is just a business pipeline thing. Like to
Yeah.
get them streaming ready, like for purchase on Amazon, that would first be done as DVDs and then they would be converted. And so when it was decided that these would not sell well enough to justify making them into physical media, either the conversation was, and therefore we cannot do them, or and therefore we should not do them as digital releases. It sucks. Like I as a completist, so even though I know those are less popular, I know that people who even dislike those seasons will want them because they don't. Nobody wants to be told you cannot have something. It's not
Yeah.
technically lost media because it still exists somewhere, but yeah,
Yeah.
there is no fan access, legally speaking, for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a it hurts my soul because I love lost media, but I also hate it at the same time because
Sure.
you know, with Robotech, for example, you can get a complete collection box set and come with little knickknacks and goodies and like maybe like a statue or whatever, and you get the badges and it's really cool. And then with Voltron Legendary Defender specifically, like you can't get a full box set. And that makes me so sad because I feel like there could
Yeah.
be some really cool goodies in there, like maybe an art book or something like that, that could well justify a costly price when it comes to a box set. So yeah, it's sad.
The problem is that it left a bad last impression,
It
and
did.
so a collected volume is for shows that leave on a good last impression, or at least sustained a fairly positive reaction to it all the way through. Whereas Voltron peaked early as far as ratings and whatnot, and then
Yeah.
towards the end of the line was clearly at its lowest ratings and reception. And so the idea that somebody has to pay money to create these products to hopefully convince somebody that their last thought of Voltron was, I didn't care for the last couple of seasons, it's just hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Definitely. All right. So on a more lighter note, I believe this is our second to last question.
Yeah.
What are your favorite headcanons? Because I know you mentioned that you kind of want to get back in the fandom, and I know like people interact with fandom in different ways, and I know, us here, we tend to make, headcanons for characters, whatever. Like, do you happen to have any with like working with, the social media, kind of entertaining those, like those kind of things?
So because I was, working as an official capacity with Voltron, I actually had to find out what the headcanon was and make sure I never reference it. Like bury the headcanon so that everything I'm posting is actually the official things that actually happened on the show. So yeah, my relationship with headcanon with Voltron is different from my relationship with other things that I'm a fan of, just because I could not get into headcanon. Not on purpose anyway.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah. All right. So this is the last question, and I believe it kind of
Oh.
wraps up the whole, TTRPG, Voltron, all that stuff. If you were a Monsters and Mana character, who would you be?
I think I'll make a paladin.
I want to be a paladin again.
Would you like?
So like just based on my experience, I am one of those human fighter type Dungeons and Dragons Pathfinder players.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the genericness of the options I'm choosing give me the most freedom to do whatever I want with the idea. Like I had a Pathfinder character that was basically Ash from Army of Darkness by making him a human fighter and giving him what was called a gnomish ripsaw glaive, which is a Pathfinder chainsaw. So yeah, I like taking the options with the most flavor, or sorry, with the least flavor to infuse the most flavor of my own.
Nice.
Interesting.
Very cool.
The chat.
What did you think of like what did you think of the episode as a whole and like how it kind of encapsulated the like TTRPG
It
thing?
is amazing. So it is kind of tragic that Keith was not in it, and it would have been like
I'm so
it just feels
sad.
incomplete because of it. But yeah, like when you watch an episode about Dungeons and Dragons, like I even at one point had an idea for a YouTube series called the D&D episode, and I would just go through every different TV series that ever had an episode where they play or talk about D&D, and then just talk about like what did they get right, what did they get wrong, and you can tell when the person writing the episode knows what they're talking about.
Yes.
and Monsters and Mana was the most like inside baseball D&D episode I can think of. The terms, like the terms that made it into the episode are super niche, and apparently a bunch of terms that were cut from the script for legal reasons by the legal department were even more direct references to like Dungeons Dragons and other fantasy RPGs, specifically because in the script it said this thing from that game, and so the legal department was like, well, no, you obviously cannot put a thing that is directly from another IP we do not own into the script and then put it on Netflix. So yeah, no, that is an amazing episode, probably the best standalone episode of Voltron.
Yeah. I remember when everyone was talking about Keith being in the episode, and I forget which panel it was, but they said that his name would be Thunderstorm Darkness. I was like, that tracks.
Yeah. And he was gonna be like a barbarian or something. Well, like the crew had like two different.
No, I thought he was going to be the mysterious stranger.
Yes, so there was like the crew had like two different, we'll say, headcanons of who he would be, because he was almost greenlit to be in the episode, and they had to cut him out or something like that. So, which is a shame, because I would have loved to see Keith in that episode. It would have been so good. And Mitch Iverson, who was the writer, I believe, for the episode, and Tim, I believe both of them, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe both of them are active D&D players. So that makes a lot of sense. That was very...
Bro, I think they'd have to be. Like,
Yes.
I cannot say as a fact, but I say if they are not, they are amazing at what they did.
For sure.
Yeah. Super awesome. All right. Well, that kind of wraps up our Q&A for today. I want to give such a huge thank you to you, Brian, for doing this with us. We know it was just kind of like a sudden, random thing, but it was so great. And we as a community kind of wanted to thank you. And so we had some of our artists in the Discord server make this for you.
Aw. Thanks, everybody. Voltron was such a big part of my life for one solid year, and the fact that it's just not anymore, I have no reason to engage with Voltron on that same level. Like, this was a nice excuse to get back in this and reflect on one of the best professional jobs I ever had.
And we're so happy to be able to do that for you, because but I feel like Voltron fans, there are people who don't know what Voltron is, or there are people who are like, my entire life is Voltron, which is me and a lot of other people. So it's so great to get to talk to you, other fans, and just kind of bring everybody together and show that the community is great and nice and has a lot of great people. So all right, well, if you have anything else you want to mention before we wrap up for today.
Nothing I can plug right now. Like, if you're interested in the G.I. Joe RPG, you've probably already found out about it. But anyway, if you're curious about what I'm doing, nothing public right now. Everything is under NDA, so I have nothing to plug. You can check out my podcast if you just liked listening to my voice. You can go to nodirectionpodcast.com, and you can find me on social media from there.